Welcome to the Bikeshed Podcast. I'm your co-host, caffeine junkie, CSS fanboy, and rabbit hole extraordinaire, Scott Kaye. Alongside with me today are my co-hosts. Up first, my man with exquisite granola boy style, the GitHub contribution kingpin, a pull request's worst nightmare, the man who tells AI how to write code, Matt Hamlin. And to my other side, the man who submits his PRs past your code review, Dillon, Spicy Take Curry. Matt, get us started with our topic today.
Wonderful introduction. I can't wait. I need to hear that again almost. All right. Anyway, the topic we have for today is all about AI. AI is everywhere these days. So, of course, we got to jump on the bandwagon. You know, like we're an AI first podcast. So we're going to talk about AI. But on a more serious note, we want to talk about like how we use AI as software engineers, right? Like, I think that's like a pretty widely adopted place for AI at the moment. Is like a lot of developers using AI to write code or run systems or whatnot. And so I figured it would be an interesting topic for us to dig into. I think there's like kind of maybe two aspects I want us to touch on, like how do you tactically use AI day to day? Like what systems are you using, what models, things like that. But then also dig into maybe a more of a deeper aspect on it of like, what's the implications of us heavily relying on AI to write code? Like is it taking our jobs? Is it like maybe not necessarily literally, but maybe figuratively, or maybe eating away at some of the nice parts about our jobs? So yeah, I think that could be a good thing for us to dig into. I guess to kick us off, I don't know, Dillon, if you want to maybe talk a little bit about how have you adopted AI as a software engineer? Like, what do you do? How do you use it? And then we can maybe go from there.
So this is a little bit of a self-report, but I was using Cursor for quite some time, and then somebody in my company told me that I wasn't allowed to use it, so I promptly deleted it so I don't get in trouble, and went back to Copilot. And I can tell you that Cursor is way better. It feels like it can sort of like read your mind in a sense, and like know what you want to do further down in the file when you start making changes. And Copilot, on the other hand, is sort of limited to the scope of the line you're on for the most part, and it feels like it gets it wrong for most of the time. And then beyond those tools, my company also provides us a like GPT Enterprise subscription. So more recently, I've been using the new feature in OpenAI's ChatGPT, which is like projects, which allows you to like create multiple chats within one project, which gives you like it sort of builds context over time. So I've been experimenting with that. I don't know if it's giving me like ton of benefit, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious actually on the project stuff. I've like heard a lot of people talk about this, and some of the stuff I've heard about it kind of seems similar to, I think, what is it, Anthropic's like artifacts within Claude, where it's like it'll generate like web apps and stuff for you. Is that what projects also supports, or is it really just like a sort of shared memory across chats?
It's a shared memory across chats. So it's like you sort of make a decision yourself to say like, oh, here's a folder where I'm gonna like keep a bunch of chats that are related for a specific reason, and sort of build context over time.
Cool. Yeah. Scott, what about you? What are you using these days? I think you're probably the odd one out in terms of this group of like we're sort of using the VS Code or VS Code forks. What are you using?
So I'm currently still using my NeoVim setup, which I recently in another episode said that I converted to using Lazy from Packer. I have two plugins for AI on top of it, though. I use Neocodium, which I think it's just called Codium and was swapped over for NeoVim users. And that handles like a lot of my autocompletes. And I just recently added, I think it's pronounced Avante, which has an in Vim chat, similar to how Cursor works. And I actually have that plugged into my Copilot license right now, but it's not great, Matt. It's not Cursor level great. I am strongly considering do I need to ask for a Claude license at work to see how that reacts? I haven't really honestly dove deep enough into Avante yet, but I am using the Neocodium hooks to do a lot of auto completion, kind of finish what I have, and it is decent. It is Copilot like that you would get out of like a VS Code, but I don't have that a strong prompt where I can prompt it what I want to build and have it just kind of output that for me yet.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how does it compare? Is that like you have used or have you have tried maybe Cursor or Copilot in the past, right? Like through VS Code or something similar. Like, how do those two plugins in NeoVim sort of rank up against those in terms of like, yeah, expressiveness or like how much context it'll generate for you or how much code it'll generate for you at each go?
That's a great question. So Neocodium is very much like Copilot. It does pretty solid autocomplete for me. It might be slightly better than that, but Avante, I believe it could be as powerful as Cursor, but I think using either Copilot under the hood or I don't have it configured well enough yet for it to give me that same power. So I was hoping to actually seriously try out Claude under the hood and use that to power it and to see how that might affect it. I just haven't gotten around to that.
Using Claude or like using like one of Anthropic's models like the Sonnet 3.5 or like the Haiku models or whatever.
Oh, yeah, good point. Using Sonnet or one of their models under the hood. Yeah, that's correct. I've just only plugged Copilot into it, and it's not Copilot can't really handle that, like prompt and tell it what to build well yet. So like trying out a different model that might be stronger is more ideal. I mean, I could even try plugging O1 into it, or maybe even DeepSeek, but I don't know if I would really want to host DeepSeek on my own. That might be a juicy topic in itself.
Like using also ChatGPT, like do you use something like ChatGPT or like you use other stuff outside of those two plugins in your editor?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I wanted to also bring that up. I do still use like ChatGPT, and sometimes using Claude, but they're a lot more limited in what you get out of it. But I will prompt ChatGPT quite often, whether it's for code, how to fix bugs, how to get started on problems. Sometimes I've grown lazy. I'm sure we'll get into this, but I've grown a little bit lazier where I let AI kind of get me 75% of the way sometimes, or just even get the creative juices flowing on what I might build. So I can actually think about, okay, how might I actually do it in the best case scenario for my use case? So that doesn't mean I always use that code, but it just gets me thinking about it and gives me like a starting point. I kind of liken this to like code reviews. Sometimes when you look at somebody else's code in a code review, you ask yourself, you will ask yourself like, oh, they did it this way, but I would have done it X way. So sometimes just seeing the code ahead of time allows you to get your creative juices flowing on like what might be a better execution pattern other than starting from scratch or needing to like write a bunch of comments and kind of whiteboard what you're building. Matt, what about your workflow? Why don't you let us know what you've been using?
I guess like one quick thought, like you had talked about using Claude and like sort of running into some of the limits there. I ran into the same issue before where it's like I maybe for about a week I tried to really seriously use Claude as opposed to ChatGPT and I just like almost immediately ran into the message limits that you can use with their like on their free plan, and so I was like, all right, I'll just go back to ChatGPT. But yeah, in terms of my workflow, I guess yeah. So I use Cursor. Like we're lucky enough here at HubSpot that we're like really in on Cursor. There were a few people actually like clamoring for Tray.ai, which is like semi recently, but that's like sort of I think offered by ByteDance, and it's a little bit suspicious of like what models is it using, where is it hosting those models, and things like that. So, but we're basically a Cursor shop. I mean, a lot of people use VS Code, but more and more people are jumping into Cursor, which I've been using also personally for a while now. It's like hard to go back to anything else. Like Copilot is like, yeah, just like whatever, like what you guys are saying is just like, I don't know, 10x worse or maybe 100x worse than what Cursor is offering. Use a decent amount of ChatGPT. Just like I use the Mac app and I just like hit the keyboard shortcut and just ask it a question whenever I run into things. I've like also gotten into the habit of like when I have an idea to like jump into ChatGPT and just sort of like workshop it before I even jump into the code. Scott, you were kind of talking a little bit about this in terms of like using using it to like sort of flush out some of the concepts or maybe initial implementations and then sort of take it from there. So I'm like the other day I was like working with ChatGPT to try to write a Merkle tree that handles like without storing the content in the Merkle tree. I don't know. It's like complex. We could dig into it, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Scott, you were saying, or you want to bring something up?
Yeah, talking about part of the reason I dug up Avante in the first place was just because like I know how powerful Cursor is. I've seen it. I've seen Matt use it. Matt swears by it. And I basically realized like I need to find something that like can help me fill in those gaps. I work full stack now. So I do a lot more back end. I work with Golang. I'm not great at Golang. Learning a new programming language is hard. It's really just understanding the concepts, but it is really great to have something that can kind of, I guess, hold your hand and make that easier for you. So using Avante was really the goal of getting that is to be a Cursor-like plugin. That is like their inherent goal. So I'm hoping to get that once I plug in a better model into it. So I will report back on how that goes. I also just might not be using Copilot to its greatest extent there. I haven't really had time. The great debate when you use NeoVim is you think about the sunken cost fallacy and you put a lot of effort into building out your editor. So it requires you in your free time to be able to add these things. So I haven't really had time to experiment enough with fixing that. And even upgrading from Packer to Lazy, I have some things that have changed in my workflow that I really want to spend a couple of hours and do some housekeeping on how that works. So I definitely will get to getting AI powered live chat, but right now don't have it. Miss it. Need it.
Yeah, I think so. We were kind of talking about this earlier, and like a little bit, Scott, you were kind of talking like maybe leading into this. I'm kind of curious to get your guys' perspectives on like how have you seen this adoption of like AI? Like 3 years ago, none of us were using AI in our editors. Like maybe we had like VS Code had some like decent autocomplete. If it was like using TypeScript or something like that, but outside of that, it was like we were manually writing lines of code. Whereas now it's like we prompt a system to write that code for you. Like I'm curious like to get your guys' takes on like what's your opinion on that? Like what's your perspective? Yeah, Scott, do you want to go?
Yeah, it's really interesting because like I used to just kind of rely on autocomplete, for like things like imports, knowing like maybe an enum value that I might be pulling from. And it's so funny that I like pulled that out of my workflow and I let some AI model kind of just do that for me. But it's just, it just feels different in the sense that I get a lot more like bare bones or rather like boilerplate out of it is what I'm looking for. Like if I start typing export defaults, right? I immediately get a whole function and it Neocodium is like really good at giving me like what I need. I can autocomplete it and I can get myself moving with it. I think that is like the high value of it is it kind of can AI is a next word predictor. We're going to talk about this, and we haven't really gotten into this, but its goal is to try to, based on your prompt, push you to the next thing. That is like the ultimate goal of it. It's not overwhelmingly smart beyond that. It's just really trying to predict what you're looking for. And the more accurate that can be, the more it should allow you to write code to not have to think too much about what you need to do, but actually prompt you with those right things. Now, like back in the day when we were using other ways to get like some sort of autocompletes, we were doing more things with like, we might write a command line CLI tool where it's like, oh, spin up this file or spin up this series of files. We know it needs this boilerplate. So it actually just like hopefully reduces that friction or that necessity. I don't think there are like tons of tools now. I could be wrong, but tons of tools that allow you to come up with like, this is our company's custom set of standards, and we want the AI to work that way. Like it seems like there is a lot of opportunity to build these kinds of maybe agents or tools, but right now it's really just a lot of folks are trying to figure that out. They're trying to think of like, what can I do with this to make my workflow better?
Yeah, like on that thread, it's like I I think I'm seeing some stuff internally at HubSpot that is very maybe like leading down that pathway. We have this internal chat like AI chatbot tool that we call Sidekick that is essentially just like an LLM, but we also have like RAG hooked up to it, so retrieval augmented generation. So like it scans through our docs and like sort of every so often updates the embeddings that it has for the docs, and that way it can like give answers to those docs. And we've started to bake that into there's like a GitHub Copilot like sort of like chat experience that's built into GitHub. And so like you can sort of like tag in Sidekick on one of those threads, kind of in the same way like that you might tag in like custom GPTs in ChatGPT, as I understand it, and like have it sort of like do some work for you. But like it does start to like sort of then ask the next questions of like, yeah, like, okay, this thing knows our docs. It should then understand, like we document our style of like how we write code and how we prefer to like architect applications and things like that. Like it should then start to understand that and then like provide that insight potentially of like, I could see it sitting in your editor and you just ask it like scaffold out me an application and it will do so like following our standards. That's like me sort of speculating of like what could happen, but it feels very like sort of next step from what the team that maintains that internally is like could sort of point towards. Yeah.
I would agree that I think those are natural progression steps of like, how can we help? And like, I think the conversation is often, oh, we're going to lose our jobs. But in reality, we're not at a point where AI can just solve any sort of problem without a person dictating well enough or prompting well enough AI to be able to build the tool to begin with, or the pieces, put the pieces together. So there's going to need to be some architectural, I guess, puppet master to kind of string things together. Matt, go ahead. You had something?
Yeah, I mean, you talked, I think you hit the, like maybe the hot topic that I was kind of hoping for us to get into also in terms of like, is AI taking our jobs? I think a lot of those sort of topics are maybe a little bit sensationalized, but I think something that I've like, so I don't know, my perspective on it is like maybe sort of twofold. The, maybe like the, from the tactical standpoint of like, will we like literally be put out of a job because the company can spin up an AI model that will do our work for us? I think that's like not yet there. Um, you know, to be seen on if it does show up eventually in the future. The other aspect that I'm maybe more worried about is like kind of an AI driven burnout for existing software engineers. So this is something, and this is like maybe a very meaty topic, but it's like something I wrote a blog post on a couple of weeks back of like it's doing a lot of the fun things, or at least the things that I find fun about programming for me. And now it's just up to me to like kind of like debug it, right? Like it generates some code, I ran into bugs, I need to like figure out what those bugs are and sort of go from there. And sometimes it's generating code that I don't even understand. So it's like, because I didn't write it, I didn't have the opportunity to build up the mental model of it. And I think those are like interesting, maybe thoughts that sort of sit in the back of my head.
One of the things you just said around like you're sort of given a bunch of code and you have to review it. Is I talked to you about this maybe a couple months ago about how sometimes it feels like AI is just like a junior engineer that you're like sort of just reviewing their code day to day. And I kind of had a point that I wanted to make around like I feel like we're talking about mostly positive things about how we're using it in our job, but I also wanted to touch on like something that is potentially negative, and that's that like now that I'm using AI at work, I tend to just like talk to the AI to solve all my problems instead of talking to my team. Um, which is kind of a weird place to be. Sometimes I have to like catch myself and step out of that and like go to the other person on my team and discuss this thing that I'm trying to solve, instead of being all on my own, which is like I have a large team.
Yeah, wow. There's so many thoughts have come up. I wanted to make one comment to Matt's original point. I don't think AI is going to take our jobs anytime soon, but I think that large corporations would like to believe that that is the case and would like to reduce headcount. So while it seems like a scary thing, I don't think we're close. And yes, like AI and technology is moving quickly. I don't think we're nearly as close to that yet. A couple other points quickly. Matt, you mentioned how like AI kind of writes the code and we just debug the small problems. That is excellent. I'm glad you brought that up too. So something that's been forefront of mind for me is like even when I was talking earlier about, oh, I just like use some sort of AI to help me write things in Golang I don't know. I'm having less fun. Or I'm using boilerplate that they're writing, or looking at code that is written, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually going to do it this way. I'm no longer in that like learning zone or that creative zone of mind where I'm having fun and thinking about the possibilities of why one way is better than the other. And I almost feel more often that I'm not as fresh. I feel like when I go to write code, I don't know the first step as much, and I don't like that. I want to CSS is something I can tell you I know all the time. I can just write it. But when it's a more complex thing, when it's JavaScript or React, like I usually know the answer. But sometimes if I keep prompting AI and I'd never have to push myself to think, I start to feel like I don't know the answer. It feels like it's a little harder to think about. So the way I kind of do that when I feel this way is I literally write out what I'm trying to do as comments, and I try to do it a step at a time. But I've moved away from that. And just to my last point, and then we'll get to Matt's counterpoints. Talking to AI instead of the team, that is something I haven't thought about. I think that's a great point that you bring up, Dillon. And it's a I guess a rabbit hole that I've fallen into. I've almost felt like I need to learn how more and more about Golang. Like I've been talking about this topic with Golang a lot right now, but basically I was doing the X and Y learn Golang, but like I start just like using AI and it starts doing stuff, and I'm not fully understanding each little concept, and then I have to stop and say, okay, it wrote all this code. What is it doing? Wait, stop and understand this principle. Understand pointers. Like pointers was one thing I was having a hard time with. There's other like constructor like handles that we will build so that we don't have to put functions that are missing parts of their interface in multiple places. And this is stuff that I've actually been doing pair programming with a coworker that is I've learned more from, and AI is like taking the ability away from me to learn that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So many thoughts there. You're kind of like shit around in my head. I think so. Like I don't know. Maybe to work backwards through what you were talking about. Like the pair programming is actually really insightful, and it kind of like talks about a little bit like what Dillon was saying in terms of like maybe you pair more with AI than you pair with your teammates, right? Like that's a really interesting like what's it going to look like for software engineers that are like maybe only got introduced to software engineering when AI was around? Like what is it going to look like for them in 5 years? Like how collaborative, how much do they like how much are they going to problem solve together versus like just be sort of like siloed and only work with an AI? It's really I think it's just like an interesting thought experiment to like think through and see like because yeah I think kind of similarly like you touched upon like the learning zone, Scott. Like it's yeah like especially if you're letting AI generate a lot of the boilerplate for you, it's like especially for something new, right? Like you're kind of like learning Go and starting to adopt Go. It's like it's taking away that learning opportunity for you to like do something incorrectly and have the compiler tell you that it's wrong, and then you learn and like you like move forward from that. Like the AI already knows like how it's going to work, and so it just like generates something, and then you're like I don't know. It's like personally, at least, like whenever I read code, I'm not going to understand it. Then if I like, I'm not going to understand it at the same level as if I had written it from like the first principle of like solving a problem. I think that's something that's like to me also is like a little bit worrisome in terms of like I don't know AI first software development or something. I think I also wanted to touch upon like you talked a little bit about sort of taking our jobs and like you don't see that maybe happening or maybe you do, but I think really the main thing that like big companies are starting to see in terms of like their hiring slowdown with respect to AI is more so the efficiency, right? It's like you've effectively taken a junior engineer and like kind of scaled them up to 1.5x of what a junior engineer can do with AI. Like we can sort of fudge the number of 1.5x, but it's like you're scaling your existing workforce with AI, and so you're able to get like theoretically more results out because of that scaling factor. But it is, I mean, so from that lens, right? Like you can say that you could probably say that yeah, the job market is more difficult to get into because of AI, or it's like harder to be a software engineer because of that. But it's like I think it's still very maybe a long way off from there are no more software engineers. But there's like a spectrum of like what does it mean for AI to be taking jobs, right? So like maybe we're very early in that, but it could be long down the road, like we're not writing code anymore. I mean, we kind of touched a little bit on it, but like the something I've been thinking about is like kind of more deeper on the maybe existential crisis sort of level of like, is software engineering fun if I get to work with AI? My original thought was like, oh, cool, it's gonna be nice to like be able to effectively pair with someone, but it's just like pairing with AI, which is like it's different than pairing with an actual another engineer, right? It's like a completely different vibe. It's the AI is just gonna try to agree with you everywhere you go, right? Like it's like it's not gonna give you like no, that doesn't feel right, or like something like that. It's gonna say like, oh, you're right, and then spit back out something to you. So I think that's just like an interesting vibe. But then yeah, it's I don't know. From my experience, it's like it's taken away the opportunity for me to learn something new or sort of like understand the system that I'm working on, and it's like abstracting that away from me, which I feel very weird about, I guess. Yeah.
It's almost like it takes away all the human interaction, and it always agrees with you, even when it or you is wrong, and it might spit out the same wrong code sometimes. And that's the part I said where AI, machine learning, is a next word predictor. Sometimes you're like, no, this thing is wrong, and you're trying to explain it to the AI, and it's like, yes, you're right, that is wrong. Let me correct myself. And then it spits the same thing back out, or a different version of the same thing back out. And then you're sitting there frustrated when in reality, maybe if you had just kind of walked yourself through that problem, and if you have a good enough understanding of that language, you wouldn't find yourself in this situation, because you're relying on the machine essentially to do a lot, and then it takes time to pick up the context. If it's if it's one small function and it's using vanilla code, it might not be that bad. But if it's using a bunch of methods from third-party libraries, or it writes a bunch of very complex things, you don't know. It might require you to stop and really do debugging. So, like you kind of alluded to this, or maybe even said it, Matt. Sometimes you're just solving the hardest parts, but also AI is taking all the creativity and fun out of what you were building.
Yeah, I had a thought about what Scott was talking about the learning zone. I'm taking it way back. Sorry, guys. But basically, it kind of goes along the same lines as like you can't really trust the AI. It will like tell you what you want to hear, and I think that's also true that like it's agreeable to a fault, in that like if you tell it like, or you ask it a question, it'll give you the answer it thinks you want, and then if you tell it it's wrong, it'll just agree with you, even if you're wrong. Like it will sort of just like let you lie yourself into confirmation bias every time, for the most part. I mean, there's probably some limits to like how much you can have it lie to you, but yeah, I've found that you have to be really really careful with it, and just don't trust it. I mean, that's the same with any human being also. But yeah, it's just something where you think it has the like the capability to use all the information in the world, but it doesn't mean it's using the right information. So I feel like sometimes for me, when I was first starting to use it, I felt like I could like sort of trust that it was like an encyclopedia of knowledge. But it doesn't mean it's all factual. That's all I'm really getting at.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I have maybe only like one other point from this topic, but I think like something that might be interesting for us to transition to is like, I feel like we were being kind of focusing on the negatives of AI, but it might be worth might be worth like talking about like what are some of the maybe like future looking but more positive things also. But before we dig into that, like something I wanted to also talk about, because like something you were saying, Dylan, sort of like jogged my memory a little bit. So I referenced the blog post that I wrote a couple weeks back. In it, I kind of make this like sort of I don't know, metaphor or allegory or whatever it is. Like sort of developing with AI is akin to like the jump from writing raw assembly to maybe like writing C++, for example. But I think like to ground it more for us, because we're primarily web developers, it's like maybe the jump from handwriting CSS to something like maybe even Tailwind, or maybe like style components, or maybe Sass, maybe like the sort of raw CSS to Sass sort of jump. And so it's interesting from the lens of like, if you choose not to use AI, you're kind of like going down, from that metaphor, from that like situation. It's like kind of like raw dogging CSS when you have the powers of Sass. And yeah, it kind of like, I don't know, it's an interesting perspective to think about, of like, it's like to not use AI is very, maybe it's like not the right perspective to take. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just an interesting thought experiment, I guess.
How is using AI different than Googling an answer, especially now that Gemini pops up with an answer right on the website? Like, it is different, but we should probably talk a little bit about that. I'm happy to fire off my thoughts, unless you guys have thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. I'm happy to jump in with my perspective. I think like before, like let's say like pre-Gemini Google, right? Like I think then it's like you sort of at that point in time, you had, at least the way I observed it, is like you had to workshop your question that you're asking Google quite a bit, right? You had to like sort of pick and choose, like, okay, let's for example say like I'm debugging some error that's thrown in my program. It's like I had to like, you have to like say like, what's the right context to throw into the thing I'm Googling to get to the right result, right? And like I think that was like kind of the art of Googling. That I feel like we sort of generally talk about that in software engineering interviews, of like, sometimes people want to see you Google because they want to see like how you pick up on those clues. Whereas with like, sort of the AIification or whatever you want to call it of Google or Chat or using ChatGPT, it's like you can kind of just like brain dump random stuff to it, or just like copy and paste the whole error stack trace, and it will do the work of doing that sussing out for you. So I think that's like to me, that's like kind of a core difference. Like you can kind of like see like, 5 years ago, it was like I have to like manually curate this thing. I have to do some mental effort to get the results I want to care about. Whereas now it's just like I don't have to put that much effort into it. I can let the system, the computer, do the thinking for me. Yeah, curious, Dylan. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, along those lines, I think the biggest difference for me is that when I start to ask the question, I know so little, right? So I can if I ask that in Google, I just get like the first part of like something that answers that first question. But then every time I get the answer in ChatGPT, it's like there's always 10 more questions that I have, and I can continue that, like build upon that that discussion and get like to the real answer that I really want. And that's a lot harder with Google. Just it's a lot, because then now you're like having to add in context into your search, and it's like how do you put your keywords together to get what you want back? But with ChatGPT or whatever you're using, it's a lot easier to be like, oh, I have thought of this too. What about this? What about this? Yeah.
I really like that perspective. I feel like it's maybe, or maybe I'm just inferring this, like sort of the opposite point of view that I have, where it's like Googling back in the day was like more interesting or maybe satisfying. Whereas like I think maybe your perspective is like actually it's cool to like iterate with the system to like make those learnings. Whereas before it's like you're kind of iterating with yourself maybe to come up with the right Google query to make. Yeah, Scott, you were saying you had a few thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it, honestly, with the how you craft a question. Yeah, and I was also kind of thinking that, like, you'd go through Stack Overflow, or you'd go through a bunch of forums where people had the same problem and kind of hope you could get the answer. So it was like more of an indirect path towards the thing you were looking for, where AI might put you in a more direct path with an answer, but it doesn't guarantee that it's maybe the method of the problem the way you were trying to solve the problem. It just might give you a solution to the problem. And how much does that matter in the grand scheme of the thing you're building? Sometimes not a lot. Maybe it's a huge performance loss. Also, like maybe you work at a company where you have slow to offline connections, and you need to make sure you account for that. So I just think it's really changed or taken away the effort you have to make to really search for a solution, and you lose a little bit of sense of ownership for that. You just like there's always was like a nicety, that's a word, nicety about like, oh, I solved this problem. There wasn't like essentially a clear answer out there, but I've like kind of created it, and I kind of have some ownership over this thing. Even if this code could get deleted next week or a month or whatever, that's not the point. You solve the problem, you feel accomplished, you move on. And again, I'm kind of hitting at a lot of the negative symbols, but it does feel a little uncomfortable sometimes when you let AI do the work, and it almost feels like you haven't achieved as much at the end of the day. Even though if you've completed a task, that task has just lost a little bit of the greater symbolism that it might have once had when you completed it, and you don't feel as fulfilled as an individual, leading to that burnout that we feel.
Yeah, I had one question I wanted to like put in front of you guys before we move on. It's something I kind of noted earlier in our show notes, but do you guys feel like you're wasting time when you're not using AI to do your work or like help you do your work?
So I was talking about the Golang examples, and I kept saying, I swear, I'm just going to do it on my own. I do think that I will try, and maybe we can all try this next week, maybe a day or two, or the whole week before we write our next podcast, and just try not to use AI and see unbiasedly how we feel about that. I think that would be a good experiment. But basically, when I'm writing Golang, I was like, I'm not going to use AI. I really want to understand it. I was working on this big problem, and I was going really slow. And I felt like I was learning stuff, but I also felt like I wasn't going anywhere a bit, like the wheels weren't churning. And I also felt this sense of dread that I needed to complete it faster. So I started yeeting things directly into ChatGPT. And while that helped me get like more, I actually found myself in this situation where I was building something really complex. I was building jobs and workers on our system, which there isn't like necessarily one like specific answer for a problem like this. It's not a one type of solution. It's not just a simple function or add function or something. It is like, what service do you use? Like, what is the thing sending the messages? Do you have a bunch of helper functions that already exist that the AI needs to know context about? So I'm trying to solve this problem. I feel like I'm going too slow because of it. And then I start yeeting it into ChatGPT, and then it made things even more confusing because now I have to learn how this code works and try to understand the system that I have that I've only been working on for not even full time back end for 3 months. So um, you know, it makes me feel like I can move a little faster. I feel worried that I'm not moving quick enough. And I've always been this way as an engineer. It might be me as an individual, but also like when I'm introduced to all of these concepts at once, it's overwhelming and almost put me in like a standstill because I didn't really know where to start debugging. And I ended up reaching out and pair programming to kind of get through this. And I actually to kind of piggyback off that conversation, I learned so much more. Um, we did a few different types of pair programming where I was driving and we were talking through the code and I was trying to write it. That's always super helpful. But also my tech lead or my manager just wrote the code with me and explained kind of some of it. And he was popping out concepts in Golang that I didn't actually already know. So I already feel like I'm learning, and I was getting more out of that than just yeeting it into ChatGPT and trying to get it working together and not truly understanding it based on the size and scale of what I'm trying to build.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point of view or perspective. I think like Dylan, like to your question also, it's like yeah, I would say my answer is probably yes. Like I do feel like I'm wasting time when I'm not using AI. Like I feel like I could be moving faster. Um, I but in I guess like in the same perspective, it's like is it really wasted time if I'm learning through that? And it's like, I think that's something that you can't really make an sort of a value, your sort of judgment on in the moment, right? Like you're gonna sit there with like sort of running into this like random error, and you're like, this isn't helpful, right? Like this is a waste of time. But like 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, I'm glad I did that because I like debugged my way through it and I learned like what I was doing wrong. And so it's like it's, I don't know, maybe it's just like a time shift thing of like looking back on the past. It's like, yeah, I was time well spent learning. Whereas like in the moment, you're like, I don't want to be doing this. This is a waste of time. So yeah, I think like from that lens, it's like I feel like we're kind of in this weird state where it's like part of me at least feels not that great to be over leveraging AI for my job or for things that I find enjoyment in. But then the other part of me is like, well, if I'm not doing that, then it's like I feel like I'm being ineffective, or I feel like I could be accomplishing more if I do leverage AI. So it's like this weird dynamic, I guess. Yeah, I think one other quick thought also, like I think Dillon, you're kind of talking about this, Scott, you're kind of talking about this also, like I think it's interesting to when we were talking about kind of like the crafting your Google query, it's like maybe the like sort of the today version of that is like crafting a prompt or like really workshopping a concept with AI. It's like sort of a lot of back and forth iteration with AI. Like maybe that's like the thing I need to sort of like get in the mindset of like Dillon, you were kind of saying this before also. It's like, you talk a lot with the AI to like better understand it. Like maybe that's just maybe the way I'm thinking about it is more so like, sort of just a single message there and a single response, and that's it. Not actually like continuing the thread of like, pull this apart for me, help me better understand it, things like that. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's like kind of maybe off topic. Yeah. Case like any further thoughts on this topic? Otherwise, we can maybe transition to something else. But yeah, like Scott, Dillon, any thoughts? Any closing thoughts there?
Yeah, I just got a quick two thoughts, but basically wanted to bring up when I'm using AI for something like JavaScript, when I know it well, and it's super easy for me to do. Sometimes I feel like I should just do that. Just write it, like stop and challenge myself, especially if it's not going to take a lot of time. And then if I really get stuck, be smarter about leveraging AI when I really need it to keep me from getting stuck. But sometimes I use AI to solve some problems, and I actually do learn something. I don't think we talked about that enough, but like sometimes I haven't done a thing enough. I don't know, I did like an intersection observer thing the other day, and I wasn't sure how to set it up. Like it would be good for me to look it up and learn how to do that. But AI did it for me, and like I could write it right now because I know that programming language well enough. I could rewrite that today without it because I only had to look at it. But when it's in like a language I'm learning, it's a little bit more rough.
Cool. Yeah, I guess like so. With that, I think I don't know who was talking about it earlier, but like I think it could be interesting for us to sort of do a no AI like sort of challenge week in a sense of like let's try to write code without using AI.
Dude, it's like I'm giving up alcohol for the month of February, but instead it's AI. Dry AI or February.
To be honest, I feel like I'm gonna really struggle. I feel like I use it maybe too much now. I'm like too dependent on it. But I'll give it a try.
Is it time for our newest segment?
Before we jump into that, do we want to set any ground rules on this? Do we just want to do a week? Are we just talking about like work? Are we talking about outside of work?
Work. I think work is enough, like, right? Because I think if we limit it to one versus the other, it'll be a little bit easier to like compare. I don't know how you all feel about that.
The whole
Yeah.
week? What about like 2 days?
Let's do 2 days. Let's do 2 days.
Can we do 2.5 days?
2.5 days. You have to hold yourself to it though. Like you can't say like oh I did 4 hours without using AI when you actually weren't writing code. You have to like be writing code and say like I'm intentionally not using AI. 2.5 days.
Okay, we'll message each other at like noon on Wednesday and say, "All right, it's over. It's AI time."
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Yeah, Scott, do you want to lead us into? I think we have a new segment this week. Let's dig into it. What is it?
Finally, we've had this segment idea brewing for a while. This is our 2 takes and a fake. I generously stayed on the X platform. I'm also on Blue Sky to accumulate tweets or zeets or skeets to read to Matt and Dillon 3 of these posts. 2 of them are real, and 1 of them is fake. Matt and Dillon have to spot the fake one. Are we ready for our first 2 takes and a fake?
Before we dig in, though, like I'm just like I know this is a waste of time, but I'm just surprised that you decided to stay on X, like or Twitter. It's like I don't know. I feel like it's just not good anymore. But anyway,
Well,
with
Matt,
that out
I'm
of the
not
way.
really on X. I'm on X to do this.
Okay, all right.
All right. So we didn't get to a topic. Maybe we'll talk about it next week or a few weeks. We didn't get to DeepSeek, but all of these are DeepSeek related. And I'm going to start you with the first one. Our first take. The biggest impact of DeepSeek is the downward price pressure. Everyone wins when intelligence becomes cheaper. All right, that's our first take. Take number 2. The sweet irony of DeepSeek is that it was human grit and ingenuity that gave them the edge, not the number of machines they could muster. If you're in technology, your number one job remains to recruit the smartest and most determined people in the world. Take number 3, the difference between a 10x engineer and a regular one in 2025, how well they use DeepSeek. Matt, which one's the fake?
I think the fake is the third one.
All right, Matt says the third one. Dillon, what do you got?
Maybe I feel like the third one's it's too obvious. So I'm gonna go with the second one.
All right, it was the third one. Thank you, Dillon. Yeah, that one was easy. I was easing us in.
Yeah, because like I feel like that the third one just wouldn't get enough views on X. Like right, like the whole point now is to get views, get like people so you get paid, right? So it's like I don't know. I don't know if it would get enough views.
We're gonna have to make this one harder for you, Matt. But just moving forward, this segment is too easy for Matt. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do our second take, 2 takes and a fake. All right. The fastest DeepSeek in the West. Serverless API speeds vary as we deal with huge interest. More improvements to speed, throughput, and costs are on the way. Talk to us about dedicated deployments for predictable speeds.
That's one, right? That's all of
That's
that
one.
content is one post. Okay.
That's one. And Matt knows
I already
everything.
know.
All right. Looking for the fastest DeepSeek inference. Our high performance hosting delivers ultra low latency so your engineers can generate, debug, and optimize code in real time. Try it now. It's number 2. DeepSeek running locally with Olama for auto completion in VS Code, 100% offline. Dillon, which take is fake?
I have no idea. I'm just gonna guess. Number 2.
Matt, which take is fake?
I mean, okay. I feel like the third one's fake, but I feel like someone could have posted it. The second one is so close to the first one, but I feel like those two could be 2 competing like AI hosted platforms. So I'm gonna guess the third.
It was the second one, looking for the fastest DeepSeek inference.
Not gonna lie, I thought the first one or the second one might have been a company that we had previously worked at together, Scott.
I actually should shout out all of the people that were actually the tweets, and I should have done this for the first one. So the third one was Rohan Paul AI, and the first one was from Dima from Fireworks AI. I did have to crop out the Fireworks AI. In our first round, we had Guillermo Roch and Jared Palmer, both 2 Vercel takes on DeepSeek, like back to back, basically. All right, our third and final round. DeepSeek is crazy. I wrote a to-do comment and it just did it. Fixed the bug, wrote the tests, updated the docs. I think I just got automated out on my own job. Number 2, having DeepSeek on my laptop gives me a similar feeling to seeing physical encyclopedias on the shelves at my home when I was a kid.
It's that one. Don't even say the third one.
Number 3. China may have jumped ahead of us in AI with the launch of DeepSeek, but they can't touch us when it comes to meme coins. We've got that lucrative market cornered. We're number 1.
Okay, before we give our guess, Dill and I we're tied, right? We each have 1 point,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is
for
the
the
deciding
marbles.
factor. Okay, so fuck, what were they again?
DeepSeek is crazy. I wrote a to-do comment and it just did it. Fixed the bug, wrote the tests, updated the docs. I think I just got automated out of my own job. Having DeepSeek on my laptop gives me a similar feeling to seeing physical encyclopedias on the shelf at my home when I was a kid. China may have just jumped ahead of us in AI with the launch of DeepSeek, but they can't touch us when it comes to meme coins. We've got that lucrative market cornered. We're number 1.
Okay, I feel like it's either 2 or 3 is the fake one. I'm gonna guess 2. I'm gonna guess the second one was the fake one.
It's got to be 2. It sounds like Scott wrote it.
Yeah.
No, it's number 1. DeepSeek is crazy.
Oh,
I wrote a to-do
God.
comment and it just did it. No, number 2 is Mark Daglish of Vanilla Extract fame. I may have mispronounced that last name. And number 3 is Peter Schiff. I don't know who that is, but I found him under people I follow. That wraps up our first. I guess the game wasn't as hard as I thought it was.
Man.
It was the perfect hardness.
So we're tied.
Tied. Next week we'll have to
We're tied
do
going
better
into
than
next week.
Yeah, that's right. All right.
Did you background check the authors of these tweets so we don't get demonetized?
No, actually, a certain company we used to work at, Matt and I, might be asking for royalties.
All right, that was great. I enjoyed that D segment, Scott. I'm looking forward to next week. All right, I think we should maybe end it on our sort of final segment of like what's something new. What's something new that people are looking at, experimenting with, just learned. Dillon, you want to kick us off?
Sure. One thing I'm doing right now, it's just not coding. I'm learning to do like play piano and read music. I never like learned how to play an instrument growing up. So it's been like a nice chill thing to do and just like get my mind off of things. And I feel like learning music is like forcing me to like slow down because you need to like play and think about timing. Just like at work, I'm just go go go, super focused. I almost like forget to eat sometimes, get migraines. So I'm hoping this is gonna like instill like some sort of zen and like focus and teach me to like slow down a little bit.
Well, I guess first off, can you even use AI when you're learning music? Maybe that's
I asked it to like show me like sheet music, and it didn't know how to do that. But I'm sure there's definitely things you can ask it about, like what are the different notes on the piano. Like that's what I'm learning right now. Yeah, I'm sure there's ways.
nice. Let's see. I think maybe I have 2 this week. So one of them is I've been sort of like exploring a little bit more on the like what Cloudflare offers as their platforms, like workers and durable objects and things like that. And so I've been messing around with building a minimal little like scrappy web framework on top of workers, which is pretty neat. So that's been kind of interesting and fun to explore. Oh no, I forgot what the second one was. Oh, DeepSeek. Right. Yeah, I was messing around with DeepSeek R1 locally. I got like LM Studio set up locally and like used it to spin up DeepSeek. I was also using Olama for it. LM Studio is pretty cool. It's just like a nice little UI to chat with AI, and you can like dump in files and stuff and just like run the model locally and like ask questions about things. Yeah, DeepSeek R1 is just like pretty incredible what it's able to do. Even in like the distilled version that you can run on your computer, like a 7 billion parameter model or something like that. It's pretty crazy.
You're gonna have to help me set that up because I was trying to do it in the first like 15 minutes of the show, and it just kept erroring out for me.
Oh boy. Something I did notice is it was difficult for me to set it up on my work computer when I was in the office because I think our network like blocks a bit like the ability to download a model from Hugging Face or something like that. Like some CDN that they use for Hugging Face is like being blocked. So I had to like go off network, turn off my VPN in order to install it on my work computer. But it's just worked on my personal computer, which has been nice. But yeah, maybe we can pair out and dig into it. Scott, what do you got this week?
Well, since you had two things, I had to add two things. I believe I've learned that Wild Cherry Pepsi sugar-free might be better than Coke Zero Cherry. Tune in next week when I'm drinking Coke Zero Cherry to say that I was wrong about that. And I feel like this is very much a cop-out because I've talked about Golang this whole AI episode, but I've learned that I need to be better at Golang. But what I want to offer is a piece of, or way I kind of look at things. The better I get at something that I might not be good at now, the more you start to enjoy it. So I'm hoping that I can really just push my skill set there and start to really enjoy writing it more, and just being a better full stack engineer overall.
Nice. I like it. I like it. I was like, you guys both had like holistic, like really good positive things, and I was just like, I don't know, I'm fucking around with AI and like building shit.
You build so much stuff. I don't know where you find the time. It's very impressive. I'm very inspired by it.
But when you said that, all I could think is like, I feel like I'm laser focused busy because I have so much to do at work that I feel like I'm working nonstop for 8 hours, and the last thing I want to do when I'm done is do more. Like, I guess it's not work; it's side projects. But to me, like continuing to do the same act of coding, it feels like I'm continuing to work at that point. So I feel like disconnecting something completely different.
So I know we're like done, but I have a little piece of like when I get like that, I actually just try to find something that would excite me, whether that means using a code sandbox or a code pen to write CSS because it excites me. I do the same thing with Burnout. I know this is not the topic, but I try to do that. The reason why I use NeoVim was because I was excited about customizing my editor. And I actually learned a little bit about Lua, and it made me a better programmer and regex and whatnot. So trying to find a silver lining that isn't directly related to what I'm working on tends to help me. Matt, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think this is like a really good topic. We should probably maybe we like shoehorn this in for next week, or the next recording session. I feel like we could go deep on, yeah, like I don't know. I feel very similar to Dillon, where it's like after work, I don't really want to look at my computer and do more work, even if it's not actually work. But maybe we shoehorn this in for next week. So to all our subscribers out there, get hype.
We can turn this into a trailer teaser.
Oh, and
I think we will.
yes, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, but before we close it out, make sure to like and subscribe and share this episode with someone that you cherished.
And drink Coke Zero.
Water's
The
better,
cherry
but
Coke Zero.
water is so much better. The new flavors they're coming out with are insane.
Tap.
Tap, spring boot.
Sparkling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.